Okay, and again, good evening. We'll get started now. This is Mike Sarnowski with Special Olympics Maryland. I'm the Senior Director of Community Sports Programs and oversee our sports statewide. Thank you for joining us tonight for the pre-competition webinar for the regional bowling tournament, or tournaments, I should say, which are coming up on November 15th. If you could please, if you haven't already done so, please do mute your phone by pressing *6 or using the mute function on your phone. That will help minimize background noise, and but we certainly do want your questions and comments as we go through. I should also point out that the webinar tonight is being recorded, and the recording will be posted with a link sent out to all coaches, as well as posted on MySOMD. So that said, we'll dive right in. We'll cover a couple different things. Again, this is all about the regional tournaments on November 15th. There's a second webinar after Thanksgiving for the state tournament, which is December 6th. So again, we'll cover locations and assignments, the schedule, registration, so on down the line. For those of you who have been involved or were involved last year with the regional tournaments, there aren't a whole lot of changes. The only big change is that we have a different location for the tournament in the West, and with that we have one county that is going to a different location than they went to last year. So we'll, that said, we can go to this with the locations here. We have, again, all of these events are on November 15th. In Gaithersburg, at Bowl America Gaithersburg, Charles County, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County will be participating there, as well as all unified doubles teams, regardless of what county they're from. All of your unified doubles teams will be going to Gaithersburg.
No, that's fine.
Yes? Oh, I'm sorry, it sounded like there was a question. If you could please mute your phone by pressing *6, that would be great. So again, that's no change, and again, in terms of what's happening at Gaithersburg, other than there was another county previously assigned there. Then we go to Ellicott City. In Ellicott City, we'll have folks from Cecil County, Harford County, Howard County, and Baltimore City. And again, that will be at the Brunswick Zone Normandy Lanes, which is the same location we've used for several years now. To Glen Burnie. In Glen Burnie, we'll have Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Calvert County, St. Mary's County, and Lower Shore, all going to Glen Burnie, and that's at the Bowl America Glen Burnie, where we've been for the past 2 years. And then our new location in Frederick, for those of you who weren't aware, the location we've used for the past 2 years out in LaVale closed down back in May. So we looked at alternative locations, and looking for one that was large enough and had accessibility that was appropriate for our bowlers, and settled on the Frederick Terrace lanes. And there we will have Allegheny County, Carroll County, which is a new location for Carroll. They went to a different location previously. Frederick County, Garrett County, and Washington County. One of the reasons that we moved Carroll was to balance out the number of bowlers that we anticipate having at each location, based on the number of lanes that are there as well. And this also gets us, so at least on average, at this point in time, on average, we should be having 4 bowlers per lane, which again, it'll be varied somewhat based on the divisioning and ramp bowlers and such, but with that average at each of the 4 facilities, that should make for a relatively pleasant and not terribly crowded event at each place. Again, the date for all 4 is November 15th. We will have the same schedule at each location. You can see here, delegation registration will be open from 9 to 9:45. We will have a very brief opening ceremony at 10 o'clock. 10:20 will be warm-ups, where athletes can bowl a frame or so. We do ask during the warm-ups to be courteous and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to bowl. Then at approximately 10:30, competition will begin. We're estimating competition ending at 1 o'clock for overall for the venues, and awards presentations starting at 1 o'clock. As we'll note later, the awards presentations may start earlier at some lanes and such, and also, again, depending upon how many actual bowlers we have there, that all may start a little bit earlier as well. One of the key things that will determine the competition, when competition begins, is each team getting us the scratches. One of the things that has to be going on while opening ceremonies and the warm-ups are happening at each lane or each facility is the scratches, or the athletes who do not show up have to be removed from the electronic scoring, and that can take a few minutes to do that. So please do, well, we'll talk a bit more about registration in a little bit. So, and also as noted there, as has been the case for the last several years, all the locations have a single session. None of the locations are 2 sessions, as I think was the case maybe the last time was 4 years ago, maybe 5. So we're happy to do that. So for registration, we will be sending out final registration lists, including divisions and lane assignments and such, no later than a week from tonight. We actually will likely be able to get it out sooner than that. But in case anything happens, any kind of hitch comes into the system, we'll say no later than Thursday night. But again, as soon as we have them ready with all the lanes and everything worked out, we'll get them out to you. In general, as has been the case at least last year, we tried to do it the year before. I'm not sure if we were 100% successful, but lane assignments should, for the most part, match your divisions. They may be one off, and what I mean by that is if we have a division of 8 bowlers, some of them are going to be, and they're on, it's division 15, some of them are going to be bowling on lane 15, and some will start bowling on lane 16. But again, it'll be right there in that same area. That seems to reduce the amount of confusion that folks have. There is a possibility, based on some equipment issues, if a lane isn't working properly, whatever, that we may have to juggle some of the lane assignments the morning of the event at a given venue or given facility. Again, just be flexible with that. Some of those things are just out of our control. During the delegation registration time, which again is 9 to 9:45, the head coach for each delegation needs to report to delegation registration, which will be at each site. It'll be generally in the control center. We'll have signs that are there, and if we have the volunteers to do so, we'll have them directing you around to that. But you'll come in, the head coach will pick up a packet for their delegation. Individual athletes do not come in and check in. The individual athletes or unified partners, if they're on a doubles team, will get their information, get their labels or their name badges and such from their head coach. So please be sure to inform competitors and family members of this, so they don't come looking, they know who to look for when they get there. Each competitor will have a name tag, similar to the one here in the upper right corner. This is actually an image of a name tag from last year. It may be slightly different, but it'll have the athletes, what we call their badge name or their nickname, whatever they go by that's in the computer system, at least based on what has been entered into the system. So here we have Katie Acton from Allegheny County. So it'll have their name, their badge name, their actual name, county, and whether they're an athlete or a unified partner. It will have their lane assignments, and again, that's assuming there were no changes on site because of equipment issues, but it will have their lane assignment, what their event is, and then their division number as well. Just so that you know, the coding that we use here, 19-S, the S just means singles. I think we use -D and -U, D for doubles or traditional doubles, and U for unified. That way we can tell easily by looking at the division what event that they're in as well. So again,
this is Katie Schumann from Anne Arundel County. It's not coming up on my webinar. It's telling me it's been removed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't help you on the technical stuff in the middle of the webinar. We will be sending these slides out after the session, so you'll get them.
What I have to do is I have to make the flyers to hand out on Sunday. I just want to make sure I'm going to have it before then.
Yeah, it'll go out no later than tomorrow afternoon.
Right.
Then we'll hold it. Okay, let me finish.
Melissa
You would?
again. Thank you.
Okay. The thing that will, we should have the event guide also ready by that time. We're on the final proof, and we'll send all of that out together.
All right, thanks. I'll back
Sure.
on mute.
Okay. So again, you'll have a name tag for each athlete. Please put that on their uniform, on their shirt. If they're wearing a jacket, please don't put it on the jacket because they'll take it off. And that'll help us with the check-in. We will give you a second set of labels for you to use however you want. Coaches use them different ways. If they're of no use to you, that's fine. We'd rather give them to you, and if a third of the coaches use them, it's worth the effort. So you'll have those. So you'll have two sets of labels, one for your athletes, one for that. We will have an additional set of labels in case anybody asks. We will have an additional set of labels at the family hospitality table so that family members can pick those up there as well. Then, as I was mentioning before, one of the things that has to happen during opening ceremonies is we need to get all the scratches in. So what we would need you to do, we realize that when you walk in, if the head coach shows up at 9 o'clock, you don't necessarily know who all your scratches are at that point. If you know some of them, that's great, but if you're going to find out as your folks are checking in. What we need you to do no later than 9:45 is to come back to that delegation registration area and report who did not show up, who your scratches are. The easiest way you can do that is just turn in the badges you didn't issue. That's fine. You can turn them in. That's just as simple as whatever, or you can give us a list. So please be prepared for that no later than 9:45. If we don't have that by 9:45, you're going to delay everybody in the bowling alley from getting started. So please be prompt, or your other head coaches will be glaring at you as they're waiting for their bowlers to start bowling. So, bowling events, again, this is a repeat from past. We have singles, we have traditional doubles, and then we have unified doubles. Singles and traditional doubles, bowlers will bowl at their assigned lanes for their county. And as I mentioned earlier, the unified doubles, all of the unified doubles will be competing at the Gaithersburg site. Ramp bowlers will be divisioned with other competitors and teams in that same event. There is no special event called ramp bowling. They are integrated into there. They need to be designated as either unassisted or assisted. And we sent on Tuesday, I believe it was, a roster. Just a moment, let me finish. We sent on Tuesday a roster out to each of the area directors and their GMS people to verify, and that included with that a listing of all the folks who were indicated as ramp bowlers for clarification. We need to know that ahead of time, not that they'll be divisioned differently, but that'll affect where we assign the lanes, because there, in some of the facilities, unlike the Ellicott City one, where you can access the bowling lanes from anywhere if you're using a wheelchair. All the other three, there are limited entrance points, and we want to make sure that anybody who's using a ramp or using a wheelchair can access that. Sounded like somebody had a question there. No? Okay, I'll go ahead.
Mike?
Yes.
George.
Hi, George.
Unassisted bowlers. I've got an unassisted bowler that's going to need help getting her bowling ball onto the ramp.
That's fine. The assisted term has to do with positioning the ramp or aiming the ramp, really.
Okay, that's what I was checking on.
Yep, no, good question. I'm glad you asked that, because that could be a confusion point. Yeah, helping moving the ball, and the athlete then puts it on there. That doesn't count as really an assist. It's the person who's aiming the ramp, or I'm sorry, whether the athlete needs assistance in aiming the ramp. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a slide in a couple steps down. Assisted bowlers need to have a bowling assistant designated to assist with them, and then also areas that have a large number of ramp that should be bowlers. Sorry for the typo. Please plan to bring extra ramps. Each of the facilities at least has a couple ramps, but if you have a large number, it may overwhelm the capacity that's there. So So some rule reminders. Same rules that have been in place since 2014 are still in place. As far as handicap, we use the 100% of 200, or the 100%. We take the difference between the athlete's average that you submitted and 200, and whatever that difference is, that's their handicap per game. Actually, that changed from recent years' SOMD practice. We've actually been doing that now. This is now the third year. We should probably pull that. But we know that some folks are used to some other percentage. But for tournaments, you use 100% here. For both the regional and the state, as has been the case for the last several years, all bowlers will roll 3 games. Well, you've only got a week and a half, but if you aren't already doing that, you should prepare your bowlers to bowl 3 games from a stamina standpoint and such. We will be, as a standard, will be alternating lanes. So if there's adjoining lanes, if I used lane 15 and 16 in an example earlier, so if lane 15 and 16 are there, the bowler will roll their first frame on 15 and then roll their next frame on 16 and then back to 15. That will be the standard. In some cases, sometimes at the ramp bowling lanes, in some cases for other reasons, at the discretion of the on-site manager at the venue, that can be suspended for some specific lanes. There needs to be a really good reason for that. Again, in some cases, it's simpler with for athletes who use ramps to bowl, to not be moving them back and forth between 2 different lanes. But the standard will be that. And again, this has been the case for several years, and just make sure your athletes are ready for that. Fouls, we will be calling foul lines at both the regional and the state, either by, typically it's going to be the automatic line buzzer type of thing, but also if a tournament official, I guess there's a way that you can foul without actually tripping the sensor. So that can also be called by a human. Don't typically have too much trouble with that, but just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Now, for the ramp bowling, and this was at least last year, may have been prior to that as well. That may have been the second year, but we needed some clarification on ramp bowling and the role of the assistant, and I believe this was reviewed at the beginning of the season as well. The bowling of an athlete who uses a ramp needs to reflect that athlete's ability. So to that end, it must be the athlete, either by physically setting the ramp and aiming it, or by directing the assistant to do so. It has to be the athlete who is doing that. Otherwise, the score is not a reflection of the athlete's ability, but rather a reflection of the ramp assistant's ability to set the ramp, which is not what we're here about. That's not sports. That could be a fun time, but that's not sports. That's not competition. So what we started doing last year, I know, is, and this is actually the standard within Special Olympics rules, is that the ramp assistant typically is going to have their back to the lanes. And then the athlete will tell him or her, tell the assistant, if this is an assisted situation, how to move the ramp. The reason that we have the ramp assistants back to the lanes, or to the pins rather, is so that they cannot be the person, there's no question, they're not aiming the ramp, or it's not their ability, it's the athlete that's directing them. In some situations, and if you believe you have a unique situation for this, you can talk to the tournament director there at your particular venue. But if it is absolutely necessary, we can have the ramp assistant turn around and look at the lane. That said, it still needs to be the athlete's ability to aim that ramp that needs to be directing how that ramp goes. It cannot be the ramp assistant doing it. And turning it around and having the ramp assistant looking at the lanes while it's getting set up could leave you open to a protest if that ramp assistant is providing too much assistance to the athlete. And another coach, or a coach of another athlete who's affected by that, certainly could file a protest on their behalf. Again, it's the athlete's ability that the score should reflect, not the ramp assistance. So, and again, the modification that's said there for the SOMD is that we're allowing for the ramp assistant to turn around in some very limited circumstances. Again, with the Special Olympics rules, that's completely verboten. But we're trying to reflect reality and make things work here. So coaching.
Mike?
Yes.
This is Stuart from Garrett County. I've got two athletes that are blind.
Okay.
Or one totally blind and the other they're legally blind. But as far as turning their backs, they're not going to be able to advise the athlete of, what. So that wouldn't play with them, would it?
Stu, can we come back to that at the end? I don't want to hold everybody else up, but let's talk about what you're doing in practice and such. Okay. So yeah, at the tail end of the call, anybody else can drop off. If anybody wants to sit in and listen, that's fine. But rather than taking that up right now, okay. But okay. We'll see what we can do. Coaching. Coaches aren't permitted in the lane area. The lane area includes the scorer's table, that kind of bullpen, if you want to call it that, right there, as well as the lanes themselves. Coaches can sit behind. And I should also point out, because this seems to be an issue each year, there are no reserved seats behind any lanes. It's whoever gets there and sits down and is prepared. I also should point out, because I'm not sure if I have it anywhere here, but I know this has happened at a couple venues. We will have extra chairs, extra folding chairs brought in for those sites that are limited in chairs. Your spectators, you as coaches, family members, whatever, if they are told to move their chair, they need to do that. The only times we've done that is when they're obstructing the walkway, which is a fire hazard and a violation of the fire code. The bowling alley must be able to move folks out of the way. Please tell your people ahead of time that may happen. They just cannot set up their chairs anywhere that they want and block walkways. And I realize that. I mean, the bowling alleys are only so large. We're hoping by getting it down to the numbers that we're talking about now at each venue, with the slightly larger western venue and relocating Carroll County there, it should be better than it has been in the past. But I know there was one argument that happened last year at one of the venues that was not terribly pleasant because someone refused to move, and it was a hazard for all involved. So please, we ask for your help with that. So, but again, so the coaches can be back in the spectator area. They can provide advice. Basically, anything goes from back there. That said, also, please keep in mind, even though we have electronic scoring across here, we have volunteers that are at each of the lanes, and while we will have some bowling knowledgeable volunteers, it is not free reign to abuse and scream at and yell at the volunteers who are running the lanes. I know you all as head coaches run your own program, and I know you can't stand it when spectators or others do that. Please advise your folks that it's not acceptable at these events either. It's very rare, or it's not, I shouldn't say it's very rare, but it's not terribly common. But please, we want the volunteers to have an enjoyable experience to come, and they can come back in the future. We certainly want things to be fair. If you think something is happening at your lane that is inappropriate, get the tournament director at that venue and have them come over and address it. Please tell your parents or your spectators who are there with your athletes, whoever they may be, that it is absolutely inappropriate to speak disrespectfully or to yell at or whatever anybody who's down there at the lanes. But that said, from the spectator area, you can provide whatever coaching advice that you want. If the bowler wants to come and talk to their coach, that's fine, but they can't leave that lane area. And any of that conversation cannot result in a delay of game, or the athlete will get a 0 for that frame. Lane courtesy is expected. Again, hopefully you've been practicing this all year with your athletes. I'm not going to go through all the details that are there. Alternates. This is more a case or more a matter of, with doubles teams, or actually it is a matter with doubles teams, because anybody who's in singles is in, who's been registered already. If you do have an alternate, if you do have a doubles team rather, and one of the players does not show, you can take one of your singles bowlers who was already registered in advance as an alternate. You can't just take anybody. You had to register them ahead of time as an alternate for that doubles team. And that bowler can join that doubles team. That means that bowler will not bowl as a singles bowler. They are now part of that doubles team, and that's the only game that they will roll. Again, you had to have registered them as an alternate in advance. And that pretty much sums up everything there, and they just bowl. I would also say if that team then is selected to advance to the state tournament, it's that doubles team that bowled that day that moves on to the state tournament. It doesn't. The alternate doesn't step off, and whoever was originally registered come back in as their doubles partner. It's whoever bowled that day goes on to the state tournament, assuming they are selected. Attire. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but bottom line is appropriate bowling attire is required. The next slide has some pictures there, but need to be in neat, appropriate collared shirts. The shirts don't have to be tucked in. Need to be wearing bowling shoes, and either their own or from the venue itself. No headgear, no hats or rimless headgear is permitted. No headphones are permitted when bowling. If someone has an issue with noise, you can get earplugs that they can pop in, but no headphones. That was an issue at a previous event, I think 2 years ago. Let's see, slacks, khakis, dockers, that type of thing. But it's easier to describe what you can have. No cutoffs, no shorts. Basically, short shorts is what they're talking about there, with the 3 inches above. No jeans, no sweats, no exercise pants. We're inside. Temperature is not going to be an issue. Leggings or any of that stuff. So on down the line, as you can see there. There will be a uniform inspection. Basically, someone from the team will go through and look at each, double-check everybody who's there. I think it's a couple coaches wisely typically bring extra pants with them of varying sizes to take care of that, in case somebody does not dress appropriately for that day. But bottom line is, if they are not in proper attire, they won't be allowed to bowl. So check that ahead of time. That said, when we say uniforms, back up here, you do not have to have your entire team in matching uniforms. If they're wearing a collared shirt and they're wearing appropriate footwear and appropriate slacks or pants, that's fine. It'd be great if they're all wearing a matching uniform for your county, but that's not required. However, again, these things here are absolutely required. And there's no change. This is nothing new. This has been the case for many years, since before I came back on staff back in, when did I come? In 2013. So then advancement to state finals. In order to go on to the state finals, the bowler must attend the regional tournament. And not to be harsh, but it doesn't matter if they were sick the day of the regional tournament, had to go out of town for some family emergency, whatever. If they're not there at the regional tournament, unfortunately, they are not eligible to go on to the state tournament this year. From the regional tournaments, every gold medalist will automatically advance. And as we started last year, because we ran into trouble back in 2013, some silver medalists will advance. I can't tell you how many. It will depend upon the divisions and how many gold medalists do move on. Once we get that done, we will determine how many silver medalists can be selected, and we will do a random draw of silver medalists from amongst all of the tournaments. Basically, every silver medalist, doesn't matter where they bowled, every silver medalist gets dumped into a hat or we actually have a raffle rotating cage. They get dumped in there, and we pull them out one at a time and select them that way. And they'll fill in any of the empty spots left by gold medalists. We will do that no later than Wednesday, the 18th. We'll try to do it sooner than that if we can. We'd love to do it on Monday if we could, but no later than Wednesday. And then we'll inform you of that that evening as well. You need to tell us no later than Monday the 23rd, so the following Monday. You need to confirm that all of the athletes that were selected, your gold medalists and your silver medalists, will be going on to the state tournament. Here, silence does not mean agreement. Basically, if we don't hear from you by the 23rd, we're going to assume that you are not going on. You need to send a confirmation in, or from your area director needs to send a confirmation in that, yes, these people are going. Then any spots that are turned back in, so let's assume County X is awarded or has 25 athletes who are selected to advance on between gold and silver medalists, and only 20 of those athletes can go on, are available to go to the state tournament. Those 5 spots will be put back in, and we'll have a wait list of the remaining silver medalists, and we'll draw from that wait list. Or not draw from, sorry, they'd be prioritized already, so we'll know who's first, second, third, and so on down on the wait list, because we'll do that all at one time when we draw the silver medalists, and we'll use those. It is important that we have all this by the 23rd so that we can then let areas know that, hey, these other 2 athletes of yours are now eligible to go on to the state tournament. We will not, after the 23rd, if any additional spots are turned back in, we are not going to reallocate those. That would just become an incredible process. We have the holiday in there and so on. So you need to tell us, you can talk to your athletes, your families, confirm that they are able to go on. You should know, walking out of the regional tournaments, first of all of your gold medalists are in that pool, and you can check right then and there with your silver medalists as well. I would say, it's not here on the slide, but if you know for a fact that certain of your bowlers will not be able to go to the state tournament, they've already told you they're going to be out of town, they've got some other commitment. It's great that they're coming to the regional, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you know for a fact that they are not going to be able to go into the state tournament, please let the folks know at registration when you check in, or later in the day if they tell you that. And if they're a gold medalist or if they're a silver medalist, we'll take them out of the pool right at the very beginning. So we don't have to go through basically people who would automatically have been selected or moved up off the wait list. They just know it at the outset. So if you can do that, that would be helpful. Keep in mind, again, a little peer pressure here. If you don't turn in your spots by the 23rd and some go unused because your athletes didn't attend, it's not me you have to answer to, it's the coaches from the other counties who could have had other athletes go in those spots that your athletes didn't do. So please do your homework. And if everybody does it, you may be benefiting because someone else did their homework, or your athletes may be benefiting. But it's really important to do this. And again, if we don't hear from you by the 23rd, we're going to assume you're not using any of those spots, and they're all going to go back into the pool. Again, you have to give, or your area has to give, confirmation that you're using them. It's really the only fair way to do that for everybody involved. So competition aside, that stuff, some other minor things. We have opening ceremonies. It'll be very brief. If you'd like to nominate somebody for the pledge or the oath, please send that to your regional sports director and include what facility they're at. We'll also include that, a reminder, when we send out the slides and the recording link and such tomorrow. The reason you need to include the facility that they're at is yes, we know what county you're from and we know what county is where, but they could be a unified team, and quite honestly, we just don't have the time to go back and look up what event they're in and what facility they're at, so if you could do that. Sounded like there was a question there, or did I mishear? Nope. I will tell you, we don't get a whole lot of these nominations, so do take advantage and utilize that if you could. Obviously, if we get more than we have space for, we'll do, I won't say it's a random draw, but we'll do a selection. Basically, if to the extent that we can without spending hours on research, we'll generally go with an athlete who hasn't had the opportunity to do it, at least not recently, to do either of those. At the regional tournaments, lunch will not be served to the delegations. You can, or your athletes can, purchase from the snack bar. All the facilities have a snack bar. However, competition will not be held up for them. If they're up at the snack bar, and not to sound harsh, but it doesn't matter how long the line is there. Their priority is to be there to bowl. So if they're up and they miss their frame because they're at the snack bar standing in line, they're going to get a 0. Yes, I do realize that bowlers can bowl up to 3 frames in a row if they miss a frame. And that's for some other situation. They're in the restroom or there's some other little crisis there. Them standing in line at the snack bar does not warrant that. Again, they're there to bowl. So while certainly that is available, if there is some other kind of an issue, they need to be, that's not going to be an exception or put into play because they're standing in line at the snack bar. Awards will be presented starting around 1 o'clock. We will, if we can, start earlier. They will be presented also right on the lanes themselves. Excuse me. We may change that for the state tournament in December, but for these, they will be presented all on the lanes themselves. As soon as we have several adjoining lanes open, we'll start with the awards presentations there. I will also take, part of the reason that we keep it on the lanes themselves is that in most cases the spectators for those athletes are right there, and we want to make it as convenient for them as possible. Also, moving bodies all around and people all coming in a fairly small space just becomes craziness. There may be a couple occasions where we ask a lane of bowlers or a division of bowlers to move down to another lane that's open to receive their awards. We won't do that if they're bowling, but to receive, generally speaking, but move them down to receive their awards, and that's just so they don't have to sit there and wait. Because the athletes that are bowling on their lane right next to them are going to be going for another 45 minutes, and it's just easier there. The reason the reason we wait for several adjoining lanes to be open is that we don't want the awards presentations for one lane to be a distraction and adversely affect the bowling of an athlete who's still competing on another lane that's nearby, either adjoining or the next one over. So, so we could just wait until everybody is done and do them all then. At that point, don't know that that's the best use of everybody's time. But again, so we make this accommodation, but please keep in mind, it's really dependent upon the open spaces that are there. Basically, late arrivals, and your late arrival is after that delegation check-in is over with. So they will be eliminated from competition at that point. We will also be, as part of the check-in and just before stuff goes, we will be verifying that everybody is at those specific lanes. So anybody who's not there, and if you didn't tell us that they're not there, they're going to be checked at that point, and will be eliminated. If you haven't told us, it's still going to slow stuff down, and again, your fellow coaches will be less than pleased with you because you'll be delaying everybody starting. But we will be checking that there. And again, as was mentioned before, the athletes, only competitors and competition personnel and so on are permitted down on the lanes. Coaches are not permitted down there. Family members are not permitted down there, unless they are in an assigned role, such as a ramp assistant or something along those lines. Weather, yes, weather, because it has affected us in the past. Although not being out in LaVale, it's less of an issue. But the chance of winter precipitation is, winter precipitation is pretty much 0, knock on wood. But we checked the forecast for Frederick, which is the furthest west, is looking great, maybe a little drizzly there. But even this is 11 days out. So, yeah. So that said, that's what I needed to cover. Open it up for questions. And I guess we've got 17 folks on the call. So if you have a question, and Stu, I'm not forgetting you. We'll circle back to you at the tail end here. But anybody have a question, or Stu, if you have a different question other than the one about ramp assistance for athletes who are visually impaired.
Yes, Mike?
Yes.
Yes, Stuart. My question, are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, about the ramp assistance as far as the blind athletes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stu. I'm saying is let's hold that one until everybody else has asked their question.
Okay.
That's what I'm sorry. So if you had another question beyond that, we'll take that. But I just want to be respectful of folks' times, and but I absolutely will answer or will address your question at the tail end. So anybody else have any?
I have one. This is Dottie. Can we use a credit card at the snack bar?
I would assume so. In all honesty, that's not something we asked.
Okay.
Can't imagine them being in business and not
Okay.
having that, but you know, I could be wrong. I would assume. I don't know, Ruth, or is anybody from Frederick County on the call?
I'm here. Frederick does take credit cards.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
I'm checking with Frederick because I know Dottie's team is going to Frederick. I would assume the other venues. I'm pretty sure all the other venues do. Frederick's just the new location, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay. Then for everybody other than Stu, although Stu, thank you as well. But for everybody, thank you for taking the time tonight. We're looking forward to seeing you all in about 11 days. We'll again send out the slides, a link to the recording of this session, which you can share with other folks, and the event guide, which has a lot of. There's nothing new in the event guide, but it does have maps. It has a link to each of the venues, or to a MapQuest, I guess, or Google Maps for each of the venues, and so on. So you've got all that. That'll all go out no later than tomorrow afternoon. As soon as we have it ready, it'll go out. And then look for no later than next Thursday, the 12th, the roster with all of your lane assignments and so on down the line. Again, we'll get that out as early as we can, earlier than that if at all possible. So thank you much. Have a great rest of your evening. And that said, Stu, we'll turn it. Go back to your question there. My question for you, Stu, would be, how do you currently do it?
Okay, with the blind athletes, we have the. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
The ramp assistant, supposed to get the ramp up there. The blind athlete will have their hands on the ramp. And all the ramp assistant will do is use their eyeballs to say, okay, a little to the right, a little to the left, and then the ramp, the athlete will actually physically move the ramp. So
I don't have a problem with that at all. Because again, as you say, they're using it, and it's the athlete who's steering it, and that would reflect the athlete. The other thing that they could do, although I wouldn't want to change things in midstream for you, is the ramp assistant or someone could be standing out, say, at mid lane and just using their voice as a cue. But as long as it is, the crux of it is it has to be the athlete doing something in that process that affects and is directing which way the ramp is going. So what you're describing, if that applies to your two athletes, is completely fine. I'll make sure that Tommy George and Melissa Kelly will be out at Frederick, the Frederick facility. I'll make sure they're aware that you and I have spoken for that.
Yeah, and then with the two athletes, also with the balls, I usually don't let them handle the balls. I just kind of set the ball up on the ramp. The ramp assistant would just hold the ball till their hands get on it.
Uh-huh.
And then, once the ramp has been aimed and it's okay and it's stable, they put the ball up there. The athlete touches the ball, holds it. The ramp assistant will, kind of stabilize the ramp facing the opposite way.
Sure.
And then fire when ready.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's an issue with that. Again, it's the athlete, from what you're describing, if I'm following you, the athlete is setting the direction of the ramp, and while someone is placing the ball on the ramp for them, the athlete is pushing or launching the ball.
Right.
So while it's certainly not 100% independent, the score is still going to reflect what the athlete is doing, and yeah, that should be no problem at all. Okay, but thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you did. I'm not sure if we have any clarifications in any of our documentation on that, but that's something we can add in the future.
Okay, all right, that'll do it.
Okay, great. thanks much. And at some point during the day, I'll see you out there. I'm going to hit each of the lanes, so look forward to seeing you that day.
We'll be there.
Thanks. Have a good night.